Hi, everyone. My name is Jen LaBarbara, and my pronouns are they and she. I work at Pride as the Education and Advocacy Manager.
Hey, everyone. I'm Stacy. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I work over at the ACLU of San Diego and Imperial Counties. And I also happen to volunteer as the chair of SheFest and the co-manager of the Pride Festival.
And she's my partner.
She's my partner.
Yeah. So welcome to the Spirit of Stonewall series, where we celebrate and honor our Spirit of Stonewall awardees for their contributions to the LGBTQ community, leadership, activism, fundraising efforts, and we get an opportunity to talk with our awardees and give you all a chance to get to know them better. Today, we're celebrating one of my favorite aspects of the LGBTQ community, which is love. The Stonewall Inspirational Relationship Award recognizes a friendship, a familial bond, an intimate relationship whose love, strength, work, and commitment to LGBTQ equality embodies the humanity of our community.
And our 2020 Spirit of Stonewall Inspirational Relationship awardees are Linda Barufaldi and Joyce Marieb. This couple has been together for 47 years, going on 48. That's right, 47. Joyce and Linda have actually known each other most of their lives and managed to not kill each other. They were born a block and a half from one another in the same small Western Massachusetts town. It was in grad school, though, in Boston, though, that they finally fell in love and have been together ever since. And I will just say we got a small preview of that story, and we're really happy to bring it to you today. They've both been active, both separately and together, in a lot of different political movements. A really long list. Here we go. Here's the list that we're going to share with you. It's just a snippet. Civil rights, the peace movement, second wave feminism, LGBTQ issues, poverty, electoral politics, anti-racism, education, environmental and immigration issues. They, and I quote here, have never met a fight for justice they didn't like. I mean,
yeah, these are definitely our kind of people. So they moved from Massachusetts here to San Diego, and as someone who's done the same, as great choice, where they opened the Amazon Sweet Shop, which was, and I quote again, a political activism cell masquerading as an ice cream store. Pretty ideal. Linda, this place was an institution, especially for feminists and lesbian, bi, and queer women of San Diego. Linda and Joyce both had additional careers beyond having this queer institution as well. Linda practiced as a chiropractor in Hillcrest for almost 20 years and then worked over at the center. Joyce's career and volunteerism spanned both Stepping Stone as a board member and then as a hugely successful CEO of GSDBA, which is the Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce here in San Diego. They got married in 2008 when it was finally legal, and upon retiring, continued to support and engage with the community through political activism for justice, all of which is why these two powerhouses are with us today.
Hi. Thank you. We appreciate your having us and honoring us. We love Pride and take pride in Pride and are happy to be nominated and I guess chosen. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a fine conversation with you today.
That's it. I can't hear them.
I can't hear you.
Awesome. And we've got a series of questions that some of them have been submitted by community members, and some of them have just been.
Uh-oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Tech support, folks, are we good?
Uh-oh. Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
We can.
Can you hear us?
That's funny because.
Are we back?
Are we back? Linda said.
Yeah, we're back. No.
I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Okay.
All right. How about now? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. See, it's the young ones with the technical difficulties, right? Boy.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You go. I'm gonna
I don't know.
try to figure some out over here. Hold on.
Okay. So we'll just roll with it. The joys of being live are endless, obviously. So let's go ahead and start in on some of the questions that folks
Okay.
have submitted, and some of the questions that we have come up with ourselves, because we are very excited to be able to interview you. So yeah, like you kind of just heard in the intro, like we teased out a little bit about you two falling in love in Boston, and I was kind of wondering if maybe you could tell us a little bit more about how you two finally came to be together, given that you had known each other for quite some time, and then something happened in Boston. So why don't you set the scene for us? How did
You want me to do it?
how did you two finally
Well,
come together?
as you said, we were born not very far from each other, but there's 8 years between us in age. So while we knew each other, it was a very small town, everybody knew everybody. We didn't play together as children or hang out together. We weren't in school at the same time, that kind of.
Able to hear that?
Yeah.
What happened?
I don't get it. What's going on?
What's happening? We should ask him what's going on.
Should I keep talking? What's going on?
Can you hear us? Can you hear us? No. You got to type over into private chat. I don't know. Not that. Up here, private chat.
Yeah.
Hang on one second.
Sorry,
We're not on yet. Yeah.
How's this?
Whoop, do that again. Okay.
over to the phone.
Okay.
All right, can you hear us now?
You're cutting in and out still.
All right.
Take it off. Okay.
All right, we're gonna try again. Now that
Okay.
we've got the nice awkward live part out of doing this. Yeah. Do you want me to repeat the question about kind of how you two met?
Sure. You don't have to repeat it. I can just respond to it if you like. So we were born in this little town. Oh, everybody's sending me texts that says that they can hear us just fine. They can't hear you.
Okay, well, it's more important that they hear you.
So we did not hang out together when we were younger because the age difference made a difference. But when we were in Boston, Joyce was in graduate school in theology and philosophy at BU, and I was at Harvard in social justice, ethics, like that. And the truth is, I had been mad for Joyce since I was little, and so we hung out more and more, but this time as equals, as friends. And then it was at the end of 2 years of being in grad school together that we actually fell in love. And then Joyce immediately went to teach at Notre Dame and left.
Well, actually, how I really fell in love with Linda was I liked being chased. That was nice. But she edited my dissertation. And so I got to see her mind and she got to see my mind. And, so that's a lot of what we share, what we think and about things. So I fell in love with her mind, but that wasn't all. So that's pretty much, how, and then when I went away to teach, she wrote me some note about she was seeing this woman. So I wrote her a poem. And it was just the thing. Right?
Right.
Yeah. So it started there and then it progressed. And we date our getting together or committing ourselves to each other. On New Year's Eve, we were babysitting at my cousin Jan's house for her children that we were very close to. And we decided, well, we wanted to be together. So that was our commitment time.
That's right.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Do you remember that? Do you remember that as far as being nervous about making that kind of commitment to one another? Or did you feel at that point that it was kind of already in the bag, so to speak?
Well, commitment wasn't that easy for me. I was, 33?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'd been around a long time and I didn't want to settle really too easily. And I didn't really know what it entailed, I have to say. I mean, we learned what commitment was in the process of our relationship. You have an idea, but I mean, until you live it, it's really, I didn't know really. And of course, it changes over time. But we thought we'd give it a try.
Well, I, on the other hand, had been ass over tea kettle in love with her for, 10 years by then. So I had no hesitation, but she sure did. What I also didn't have, however, was any relationship skills. I had not come up in a house where that was modeled, or I don't know. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to communicate, and we weren't that good at it together.
No, it was not easy.
No,
we had to get help. So we thought we got therapy. What was fun about it, though, is we came to San Diego and we went to this woman I had met at Las Hermanas. You probably know about Las Hermanas, Women's Center. I thought, well, she'd be good. She's a psychologist. So we went to her. And I guess we kind of were a little raucous and we fought during the thing. Mm. And so she said, I don't know why you two want to be together. I thought, this is a therapist? So we went outside and we figured, well, it's us against the world. So actually she helped us bond a little bit. But I'm being facetious, but therapy throughout our relationship, couples therapy, has taught us what we needed to know to have a life together that was a mature, grown-up, responsible, happy life. So, and we continue to go from time to time.
Yeah, like when you're having an old fight, you're not really having it. It's not about that. It's about something else. So go to the therapist, find out what you're actually fighting about, and talk about it.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
Yes, strongly agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a blessing, and it was just starting, I think, to be a more common thing like it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was a child, I remember asking to go to a therapist and having, being told, oh my God, that, we don't do that sort of thing, So, yeah. But we work it through. We just work it through. We know now that nobody's going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
What's that thing you say about how do people stay together?
oh, don't break up. Yeah. People ask us all the time what our secret is. How do you stay together? And we say, well, don't break up.
Yeah.
Um,
And don't threaten to break up.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's where therapy was helpful. You know, either stay with it or go, but don't threaten.
Yeah. Yeah. You can go if you want, but if you say you're going to go, you got to go.
Yeah.
So
We're staying.
we're staying.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
that was one of the questions we were going to be asking you, was some advice, and you've already given it to us. So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And I don't know, after nearly 47 years together, do you feel like you're still kind of learning new things about one another? Or do you feel like you know each other like the back of your hand at this point?
Well, there is that. I mean, very familiar, you know, but the other day, Linda and I were talking about, you know, since we were going to do this, about our political past and the things we had done. And, you know, I've heard Linda's stories. If anybody knows Linda, they know she's a storyteller. So I have heard her stories many times. But I heard something new the other day. She told me she was a founding member of NOW at Cornell. I never knew that about her.
There were three of us,
Three women at Cornell.
three women at Cornell made the Now of Cornell.
I didn't know.
We had a letter for each person.
But I think you know everything about me, don't you?
God, I hope so.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of anything that I wondered about. I don't know. Like Joyce went to a Catholic college. And so once in a while, I'll learn what a Catholic school is. Like she'll say something that, you know, she'll say, so of course we all had to go to mass every morning or something. And that I'll kind of go, what? But
We didn't.
okay, well, that was somebody else, I guess.
Yeah.
So anyway, we mostly know each other pretty well.
Yeah.
We can often speak in half sentences. Did you? Yes.
Yeah. That seems like a thing to aspire to.
That does
Yeah.
indeed, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
So I do. Yes.
Yeah.
So activism has always been like a huge part of both of your lives. So, I mean, I have a lot of questions about that
so many.
as far as your relationship and activism, your relationship to activism, but then your relationship as a couple and activism. So I think start with like, how did you both become activists, right? Like you both grew up in, I mean, I know Western Mass and it's, you know,
Yeah, not a lot going on.
Yeah,
there.
no, it wasn't there.
so when did it start? Like, how did you decide that was what fueled you?
I always blame the Pope. When I was a sophomore in college, the Pope said that all Catholics, and I still was one, should pray for peace in the month of October. But how the radical chaplain at Cornell interpreted that was to have a vigil for peace in the war in Vietnam. And he asked if I would come and bring my guitar and we would sing peace songs. So I went and I learned a lot of stuff about what was going on in the war in Vietnam that I had no idea about. And so then I began to work against the war. And then something that was very formational for me was a project that I was in. In some ways, it didn't do anybody any good, but it was called a Project to Organize Whites to Eliminate Racism. And we went to suburbs in Westchester County in New York and try to teach people about institutional racism. And we knew about institutional racism because there had just been the Kerner report that the government put out that talked about institutional racism. And while I don't think that project did much, I know we went out to dinner a lot, but I don't know what else we really did. We tried to talk to high school kids, I think. So who knows what happens when you know, throw a stone in a pond. But what happened for me was that I realized if there's institutional racism and there's all this oppression going on that I had no idea about, then there must be institutional other stuff. There must be institutional sexism and institutional ableism and all of that. So I began to see it all as of one piece. So I don't think of myself as being an activist in a lot of different movements. I think of myself as being an activist for justice, for equality. And wherever that happens to come up in front of my face, that I see that there's some, you know, and sometimes it's a little thing. I mean, I was pretty sick at the beginning of the Trump administration. But one thing I did do was that every morning when I woke up, I pulled up my 5 calls app on my phone and I called 5 members of the Senate and the House of Representatives or the California State Assembly or the California State Senate or some committee or something. But I made 5 calls. And you know, if you look on my 5 call app now, I'm more able to run out and do stuff. But, you know, there are hundreds and hundreds of calls made. It took, I remember, 6 or 7 minutes every morning. But, you know, we always do something.
Well, I think for me, life taught me about justice or injustice. When I was young, when you were 14, you could work on the tobacco farm in the summer. And I did that for 3 summers. And there were Black kids from Springfield that would come. And so I'd have contact with Black kids that I wouldn't have in my little town. And then my mother was from Louisiana, so she was very color conscious. And my family, we were like the darkest, pretty dark skinned in our community. And so we were called the N-word. So, you know, a reflective person, you think about what in the world is this about? And why are people doing this? And then when I studied literature, you know, literature like just opens every community up to you. And you meet people you never would have met, and you think thoughts you never would have thought. And that really turned the tide for me. And that's somehow I became a teacher, because I realized that if my spirit could be changed and I could learn and grow from where I was, then I would like to participate in doing that for other people. And then that's kind of like getting involved and doing. So that's kind of where I was.
Yeah.
And then there was the Catholic Church was involved in that. I used to teach catechism. I went to Catholic, I did the whole thing. And the Catholics used to have, still have probably, a just war theory. There are times when you can go to war. Well, I thought about that and realized, no, there are no times. So I became a pacifist, and that kind of influenced some of what I was involved in too. Like that.
You know, you talk about kind of cause, the big kind of justice. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering what your kind of thoughts and reflections are regarding kind of like the most recent calls for justice amongst like the Black Lives Matter movement and the Black Trans Lives Matter movement. And I'm kind of wondering how you see that fitting into the long arc of justice that you have been involved in.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
You can. Well, I like the quote that you're referring to. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. So what I think is, that I spent a long time in my life not knowing there were trans people. And I spent some of my life not knowing a Black person, but the more that you go out in the world and you meet people, the more it opens you up to the idea that people will find any excuse in the world to discriminate against other people, and that I'm against that.
But you were saying earlier that this is the civil rights movement that we were in.
Oh, that was a question. Yeah,
in the 60s. It's the same movement. It's moving for justice and equality for Black people, and we were involved with it then, and we are now. And what's interestingly different about everything now is the vast numbers of people that have risen up and are in the streets. I mean, we've been in the streets forever, but the biggest crowds in the old days used to be if you went to DC and everybody congregated there. So there'd be 100, 200,000 people, but you'd never see that in these other marches and demonstrations. So, I mean, it's a groundswell, and I'm hoping, the story about the 100th monkey. Can you tell it?
Well, I don't even know if it's really true or if it's like a fable.
No, I believe it.
Okay, she believes it. But theoretically, there was some kind of an animal scientist who watched the monkeys. What?
Cat.
Oh. Watched these monkeys on an island, and one monkey figured out how to use a stick to open a clam or something. And then she taught her child to do it. And then they taught each other and they taught each other. But then when the 100th monkey, some critical mass of monkeys, had learned how to do this, suddenly all the monkeys knew how to do it.
And not just in that location, other places they did. So it changed. What is that called in science?
I don't know. I'm retired.
I'll get to it in a minute. But so it changed. So it was the turning point. So I'm hoping.
Well, critical mass.
Critical mass.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that this is what's happening to us now, that this is the turning point. And, we'll see.
Yeah, I always think it's the turning point. I always want it to be the turning point. One difference I see now is that the people there are more young people.
Yeah.
And that in these Black Lives Matters and, about the police brutality and about institutional racism, there are more white people marching than when we were marching before. I mean, we used to be a small minority in that crowd.
And the thing I wanted to say about this movement is that we found this, and the reason I was involved in the business association for gays and lesbians was that you have to attain wealth in order to attain equality. So that there's a correlation between having money and having justice and freedom in your lives. So we have been able in the gay and lesbian community to do that and to work to build that wealth. And now the Black community, that wealth has been taken from them. And now they have to start all over almost, but they have to build economic wealth in order to have equality. That's just how it works. I mean, that's how I've seen it, and that's where the power comes from.
Yeah, so, that's that's the reality of that we live in a capitalist society. As much as we might dream something else and dream something else into existence, the reality of the now is that, right, that is one of the ways that we get power is through through taking back the power and the wealth that has been taken from us, which still got quite a lot of work to do. I wanted to ask about that turning point that you were referring to, right? Like you always think it's the turning point. You always hope it's the turning point. Is there, and like I'm in my mid 30s, and so I have some experience, but y'all have more years on me of of feeling that, is this the moment? Is this the turning point? Does this moment feel different? Does it feel like something really is changing? Because it feels that way for me, but I also recognize that I have fewer years under my belt and may be wrong. I'm hoping I'm right, but.
Well, I thought that's what I was saying. For me, it does feel that way. And I've had hope before, but this hope is new and different for me. That there's just people who you'd never expect to be out in the streets, who are out in the streets, and they're doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. They're not, there are good people. Well, now the good people are rising up, and so more of them, way more. I don't know. You feel that way, honey?
I am not as hopeful as you are. I feel like I always think it's the time, and but also that there's a way in which it always is the time, in the sense that you keep doing it. You have to keep, that Sweet Honey song, "We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes."
Yep.
And that's what I think. I think I made a commitment a long time ago to do what I could when it came in front of my face, and when nothing came in front of my face, to look around and see what I could do. I've felt really the worst part of the quarantine for me has been that I did not feel at my age, and given my health, that I could go out in those crowds. And so I feel like, I'm a senior, it's the prom, and I can't go. And I really want to be out in the streets in this, but I'm in here calling people. So, yeah, I do feel, I do feel it's a different thing, and I'm missing out on a big deal, different thing. But I also, at this time when there's so much pushback, that's when you also see how much hatred there is, and how much just flat out racism. I mean, you see people saying stuff on video, and you think, well, on one level, thank the goddess I don't hang around with people like that. But I didn't know there were people like that. I mean, I know there are people like that, but there are more people like that than I knew. And because I guess because, like, just take racism as an example, that's a really stupid position. And you just think that people would have more sense.
The level of ignorance is phenomenal.
That's an amazingly stupid position.
Mm-hmm.
And all these people have it. I don't get it. And it's fact resistant.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're being now they're being fact resistant about a freaking virus. And they just, they don't want to know it.
I think there's a lot of fear base in the society, tremendous basis of fear behind all of this stuff. And people don't know how to deal with that. They don't have the tools. Some of it I think is a failure of education. That, we got a lot, we didn't start with much, but through education, we were able to do and be and grow. And I don't know if the education system is failing, or I don't know what, but education did it for a lot of us and continues to do it for a lot of people.
Yeah, for some people, I think it's that you can get a good education, you can go to college, you can get a college education, and then you come out and you can't get the kind of professional jobs that we were able to get ultimately to where we could, buy a home and put money away for retirement and stuff, that it's fine. I mean, just economically, with the 1% having, 90 whatever percent it is of the wealth.
Yeah, the insecurities.
So that the number of people, it used to be we would talk about the food insecure people of the world. Now there are, we talk about the food insecure people of the United States of America. And while they've always been there, they're massively larger in as a demographic. And so that, Joyce and I, in some ways, lived the American dream. I got 2 free Ivy educations. And then, I was able to get jobs, and I didn't always,
Well, sexism was still at work then,
yeah, there was that.
and it still is. There's a lot of things that continue.
Yeah. But I think it was possible to get from where we came from.
Sure.
Your sister said that the other day. How did you get there from where we came from? But it was possible, and there were some economic things possible to us that aren't possible now, even to white people. So it's starting, and this is where some of the rage comes from in the in the racism, is that it used to be possible for white people to progress, and now it's not. And of course, some of them blame the people of color, which is not who's doing it, but yeah.
There are so many issues, There's so many.
May I ask them a question about that? Yeah. Along the lines of there being like so many issues, how have you two kind of dealt with like burnout, kind of like activism fatigue, and how have you found that like activism kind of affects your relationship? Like, have you ever had something that you didn't agree on as far as kind of like your activism roots, like maybe an issue that was a little stickier for one of you? So burnout, how to combat burnout, and how you manage activism as part of your relationship.
Well, how I deal with burnout is pretty much how I try to deal with most things in my life, is I try to live today. And I ask myself, what can I do today? What do I have power to do today? What's not in my power to do today? And so in the old days, I used to think, well, I'm going to save the world, and I'm going to go out, I'm going to do it all. Well, I had to get rid of that kind of mentality, because, as you're right, it's exhausting and you burn out, and it's unrealistic. It's a little bit on the sign of mental illness, So I try to face what it's possible that I can do, and do that, commit myself to do that. So that's helped me. Have we ever disagreed politically?
I think that I might have taken longer to feel I personally could have an abortion than you did. I was at that time still pro-choice, but I didn't feel like I personally could do it. My Catholicism lingered for a while.
Yeah.
That's a time I remember that we had a different,
Yeah.
I wasn't against your position. I just was saying I couldn't do it myself. And now I've changed. Now I could. But as for burnout, for me, I do burn out. And when I burn out, I stop watching the news and I stop looking at Facebook for several days. Another thing is that we have been lucky enough to have enough resources that we go on a few vacations a year, 2-3 vacations a year. And you know, once in a while we'll do something political on vacation, but almost never. I got very excited when we went to Tahiti and they were doing they were trying to make a bomb test happen keep a bomb test from happening at an atoll that was not far away. But mostly we just stay out of it and on vacation. So, you know,
that's important.
we just, and we also make our home a serene place. And and we're careful about, I mean, I think all this matters. We're careful about what we eat. Well, I haven't exercised since I was sick a while ago, but we both exercise quite a bit. And so all those things I think help you to take it on, but you know, to just be here now and there's some, I don't know the name of the rabbi, but there's some, a quote of a rabbi I see on Facebook every once in a while that I really love, which is something like, look, you're not going to change the world completely. And you're not even going to change it massively. Neither are you free to abandon the task.
No.
So, you know, that's
you know, and we have each other. You know, we're not alone in this. I mean, we're great support to each other and inspiration, and makes it easier.
Yeah, and we have a lot of family members and friends who are politically active.
Yes.
So, you know, somebody texts me and says, oh, well, we, you know, went to the demonstration and here's some photographs. And, you know, my niece sent me a picture the other day. Here's your nephew at a demonstration, you know, and so, you know, we're not hanging out on some planet all by ourselves doing this. And go ahead.
No, I was thinking about, you know, being a lesbian too, that how much support we got from the community. I mean, having a community at all is just it's quite a gift. I mean, there are all kinds of people. They're mostly not all like-minded, but supportive of values that we have, and they're just there. And you know, I mean, you all know about that. You deal with Pride and ACLU and all those things that we know are there, and they're doing the work, and we're all involved in that, taking care of one another. It's good.
Here's an example. When I first started to get sick about 4 or 5 years ago, I went to my Sunday singers group, which is a bunch of women who sing together every other Sunday morning. And we never perform anywhere. We just like to sing, so we sing. So I got all dizzy. It was the first time it happened. I got all dizzy. I said, I'm dizzy. I got to go into the bathroom. By the time I came out from the bathroom from putting a cold cloth on my head, I came out and they said, okay, so-and-so is going to drive your car. She's going to get with her and they're going to follow you home and pick her up. And I mean, they had me they had me sorted out before I had wrung out a washcloth and put a cold cloth on my head. I mean, that's how lesbians are. And one of my favorite signs that I saw at one of the women's marches was, they may have all the guns, but we have all the lesbians. And I feel that way. I feel like, you know, lesbians are incredibly powerful women.
Yes.
Get the job done.
Yeah, we do.
That's right.
That's amazing. That's actually kind of like one of the questions that we wanted to ask, which is, right, like you all, I mean, you created one of the big institutions of of lesbian and women's community in San Diego. So you've always been and had that solid community of women around you. And so how in your time here in San Diego, how have you seen the community change or shift or evolve over time? And right, like, because I think now we mostly call it the queer women's community, and like there's a difference in political, but also not really so much. Like it's so thoughts, feeling like, what have you seen in the evolution? And do you feel like it's as strong, differently strong?
Go ahead. Oh, you know, things change all the time, and how people identify changes all the time, and we identify differently, and so that has to be respected no matter what time period we're in. When we came to San Diego 40 years ago from Boston, and in Boston, if you were a lesbian, you were political.
Mm-hmm.
When we came to San Diego, and if you were a lesbian, you were probably called yourself gay, and you weren't necessarily political. So, so those two kinds of points of view were in the same community, and we tried to do like reconciliation and understand one another so that, you know, we'll be accepting. Because in all the movements, you know, there's a struggle, there's people different, and people striking out against one another because you're looking for your identity. So we were trying to define ourselves in those days as lesbians. And to do that, we kind of had to be in together pretty much and understand one another as best we could. So where was I going with that?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Well, how has it changed? I think one of the big things that changed it is that AIDS happened.
Yeah.
And then there were always some women who were more identifying with gay and the gay center and that kind of stuff. And then there was more the lesbian feminists.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some crossover.
Mhm.
But then when AIDS happened, it was very clear that nobody was going to do anything for those men. The government wasn't going to do anything. I mean, one of the reasons that every queer person my age adores Anthony Fauci is because he said, oh, here's a virus, I will work on it, just as if we were people.
Yep.
And he did. And so we came together to help take care of each other and do the stuff that was done, you know. Because really, before AIDS, I didn't really know very many gay men.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that I knew more straight feminist women than I knew gay men. And I don't know that feminism is as high on the list of the current queer women group that as I would like to see it, because I came out as a lesbian into a lesbian feminist community. I mean, you know, Shulamith Firestone said, feminism is the theory, lesbianism is the praxis. So I would like to see more feminism happen. I would like to get less sexist stuff happen to me from gay men and from men of color. And I would like to, you know, improve in my ableism and my anti-racism. And I mean, I think, you know, we've got to have stuff. We've all got a lot of work to do about everything. But one thing we were talking about before we got on here that I wanted to just bring up is that, you know, like there was a time that women-only space was a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that got a bad rap. And I really think that we cannot heal from the damage that happens to us because of discrimination and hatred if we're not allowed to be together as women, or be together as Jews, or be together as people of color. There's no question that in a room full of people of color, I walk in and the vibe changes. And that doesn't mean, in my saying that, I don't intend to be divisive, but that we cannot have diversity every second. And we don't need to have diversity every second. That what we need is to have some time where we're alone with the people who've been hurt the way we've been hurt, to heal and to be heard. You know, this happened to me, it hurt. And there will come a time when white people will be able to hear people of color saying that. And I work to be one of those white people, but I don't think we're there. And in the same way, I think there are, my dear friend Albert Bell, whom I love dearly and who is gone now, but he and I became friends because he called me up at the Amazon sweet shop one day and he said, I'm reading Mary Daly's book about feminism. And I said, you are? And he said, that's our Jennifer Risinger and I put together an anthology. That's a picture of the anthology that we did. So anyway, Albert said, I'm reading this book. And I know he says, I know it's not your job to teach me about feminism. I said, you do? And he said, yeah. So he said, but I was wondering if you give me a half hour of your time, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. I said, get over here. So he came over, and that was how, our friendship began. I think as we tried to hear each other, that we will be able to heal each other better than we can now. And until that time comes, I think we need women-only space, LGBTQ only space, people of color only space, when that's what those people want.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'll get off my soapbox now.
Yeah, no, I went to a women's college, so I went
Nice.
to Smith College for
Yeah.
undergrad. So I absolutely fully agree, right? People of color only space is super important to be in a space where you don't have to code switch and think about how is this, like, am I going to hurt white people's feelings if I say this thing?
Yeah.
And I think when we're talking about how women's only spaces, got a bad rap, it's because those women's only spaces were transphobic and biphobic often, right? Like there's a lot of really healing things that happened in those spaces where, right, like people who were welcomed into those spaces had amazing experiences. And there were trans women who were excluded from those spaces. And I know there were also bi women excluded from queer women's or, gay women's only spaces, because bi folks were seen as not gay enough and trans women were seen as not women enough. And so, and I think that those women's spaces, right, which is why we do She Fest, are still so important, right? Because those marginalized, those of us among us that are marginalized do have that trauma that we carry with us, and we need our own people to be there to hold us, right? As kind of goes back to how y'all were talking about the power of a lesbian women's community and the women that you have around you who are like, got your back through and through. And so I think you're absolutely right that those kind of closed spaces, they don't exist like on their own, right? Because separate is not equal, but they exist in a space that is there is kind of healing space so that we can go back out and I loved what you said with the once we can hear each other, we can heal. And I paraphrase, and you said it much more beautifully, but right, like
Well, I think
when
that's
we're
a
in
given.
those spaces together in those closed spaces, yeah, like we can go back out, and like I, as a person of color, once I've had that like healing space with my own people of color, then I can go out and like hope that a white person can hear me, because I've shored up those resources, right?
Yeah.
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 Amazing. Okay.
Yeah. What else you got, babe?
Well, we're coming up to 7 o'clock actually already.
yeah.
I don't know how that happened already. And I know we're supposed to be kind of honoring, you know, all the facets of your relationship, which has been amazing. And, you know, I've really loved talking about like the activism and community. I was hoping that maybe because we are getting close to the end, maybe we could close out with like 2 questions that kind of shift it back toward your relationship, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. Okay. So the first part of the question is, what's one thing that you really love about one another? Just one.
Okay. What I love about Linda is that she's just who she is. You know how in children they have that innocence that it opens your heart and you can relate to them and love them?
Yeah.
That's what I see in Linda. Wow.
I love Joyce's depth. And what I mean by that is that who Joyce is comes from way inside herself, where you can't really make her feel bad about herself. She's got it in there. And I admire that and aspire to it. And yeah, I really love that.
That's amazing.
Can I ask that?
Yeah,
Yeah. So then the second part of that question, or second question, is what's one thing you really love about your relationship with each other? Again, just one thing.
I really love that now, after a lot of therapy and learning to communicate, it's calm.
Mm.
You know, that it's a place of peace for me.
Well, it's kind of trite to say, but I love the love. I mean, you know, it's I don't know. I can only say one thing, right? That's it.
That is an amazing answer. Yes.
Both those answers are just
Perfect.
Like,
Yes.
fuzzy feelings
Yes.
abound.
Yes.
You asked for it.
I know, I did, and you gave me everything that I was. You gave
We're
me everything my
fuzzy.
heart
That's
was
how you
hoping.
do it. I don't know.
Yeah. Aspirational,
Yes.
for sure.
We'll be waiting for your book to come out on
Yes.
your relationship. Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I could definitely talk to y'all for like hours and hours, but we do need to wrap it up. So
Let's make that happen over coffee one of these days when we can go out again.
I would love that so much.
That would be
Yes,
amazing.
please.
Me too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we would love
Thank
that.
y'all.
Thank you. And
you.
thank you for your work at the ACLU and your work with Pride. And, you know, thank you for all your work.
Yeah. Because we're retired. You got to do it. You hear that?
Did we both breathe? Okay. It's fine. Yes. Yeah. And thank you both for all of the work that you have done over 40 plus years.
Yeah, like trailblazers in so many different ways, right?
Yeah.
Like for our lesbian community, but also just as like couples goals, right?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Yes. So thank you everyone so much for joining us. The Spirit of Stonewall series highlights our amazing 2020 Spirit of Stonewall awardees, and all previous interviews and this one are available on Pride's YouTube channel and on sdpride.org/live. And a few, my notes are gone. A few, just quick save the dates for y'all is that one, oh, there we go. Thank you, babe. First, so celebrate with us. As you heard, Stacy is the chair. I'm the staff liaison for She Fest. So please come celebrate with us on Saturday. The legacy that Linda and Joyce and so many countless lesbians, bisexual women, trans women, and queer women before us have created. And so join us at She Fest Saturday, 10:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. on the internet. And then also save the date for our virtual rally, which is my personal favorite part of San Diego Pride. And also, this is our cat, when we'll be honoring all of these awardees. It will be next Friday, July 17th at 6 p.m., also on the internet. And we also encourage you to help support Pride's year-round education and advocacy programs while we continue to connect with our community virtually through things like this. And so if you're able, please donate at sdpride.org/donate. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Bye, Joyce and Linda.